Red snaps on and the belly of the Dakota turns cave red, faces washed, pupils flaring, door yawning to wind and fog. Slipstream knifes cold down the line of 18, webbing hums on the edge of hearing. Pivot Eddie Sloan does what he was drilled to do, palm the reserve handle, tug for weight. Only the fabric slumps, a pillow exhaling. His other hand digs and finds quilting and straps where white silk should wait for his life. The pack sags against his chest with the insult of a toy, whispering stuffing and buckles instead of the stiff tremor of a folded canopy. Flak blooms hotter ahead. Somewhere between 4 minutes and 2, his breath goes shallow and loud inside a mask that tastes of rubber and someone else's fear. Sergeant Leo Hart sees it in the red wash, Sloan's hands, the pack slack, eyes widening under the netted helmet, and he is moving, gliding down the line with a stick leader's economy. Overhead cable in one hand, he taps shoulders clear with the other, leans over Sloan's reserve, fingers going in. Calm hands against rising blood. What he pulls free is padding cut to shape. No weight, no memory of folds, only a lie built to fill space. His thumb catches paper where it shouldn't be. He lifts the tag into the red light. Date, lot, rigor, purple ink, too crisp, the flourish too confident. His eyes flick to the door, to black, to faint Dutch lamps below, and the wind tears at the thought forming in his head. The intercom hisses. Leila Lund. Frank Devereaux's voice comes flat through tin. 2 minutes. No go-around. Make your window, as steady as a metronome while the aircraft shivers. The red to green will match the navigator's watch, and code panels none of them have seen. Hart hears that cadence like his own breath and like the roar at the door, pressure hardening into seconds that can't move without hitting a dozen other ships and sticks. The DZ flak corridor is a slot. A second pass invites searchlights and better aim from hedgerows and farmyards. Keep one man aboard, and the C-47's trim shifts. Down low, the pilot has no spare air to catch that sag. Sloan's helmet bumps Hart's chin. Their eyes lock for a half second and carry the words that won't fit. I tugged. Empty. It is. Now what? Sloan's chest tightens around the possibility he'll ride back past stairs to an empty field. His hands work the skin that isn't a canopy. Training said the reserve is for low malfunctions when the main fails. Training didn't say the reserve might be hollow. The green in his head is a minute out. His heart is already at the door. Another tremor runs under their boots. Flak walks toward them, black blossoms painting rivets and a rosary clenched in the third man's glove. Someone gags behind rubber. Bile sours the air. The pilot corrects for a crosswind, 12, maybe 15 knots, pushing them west, threatening to drift their ground track toward the canal Hart memorized by flashlight an hour ago. Radio brevity is stripped to bone. First pass is the pass. Hart can feel the captain up front riding both engines, holding altitude and speed against wind and the drag of 18 men and kit. Choreography by pounds. The reserve's tag glows too clean, purple stamp neat as Sunday, date hours old, lot tidy. Blessing or curse in neat ink. Hart turns it and sees the carbon copy's faint bleed-through, the ghost of an original pressed too recently. Protocol says 2-person check and a third signature, date and time. Somewhere those hands signed, somewhere a pallet shuffled at a threshold, and paperwork rode with inventory like a boat through fog. He believes his palm over the paper. Sweat makes truth slick. The door slaps air. The bulb hums. Their world narrows to an aisle and a hole. 18 is the plane's math. Keep all until green, and the balance holds. Pull one off and stow him aft, and the pilot will feel it in the elevator, a micro-sag at low altitude that leaves no daydreaming. Hart looks past Sloan and counts without thinking. 1, 2, 3, weights he can feel. They're in the run-in stack. No one has authority to stretch the string holding 20 ships. The ground already laid the DZ letter like a word that means, drop here. Even when he doesn't hear Devereaux, the order beats in the fuselage. Make your window. Sloane's brain flickers to bad jokes about rivets and flapping arms. Stateside, silk was clean, and the horizon didn't spit fire. He remembers a corporal's classroom demonstration pack, canopy-less for drills. The weight on his chest feels exactly like that memory. He wants invisibility inside routine, fall, open, land running. Routine just turned on him. The pilot's voice bleeds in. Crosswinds shifted, tight interval on the drop, and the crew chief's look pins Hart with the loadmaster's math. Men are weight. Weight is liability when the air is thick with steel. Devereaux in the lead ship rides timing like a blade. Anomalies are noise you trim with tone. He doesn't know about a hollow reserve here. If he did, he would call it an outlier and still press the window. The corridor is a canal you don't re-enter. Hart tilts the tag and memorizes the lot number. It lands with the weight of a key he doesn't yet have a lock for. He thinks of the rigging shed, a requisitioned barn, damp wood and oil, a forward detachment working chutes with chalk on canvas, quick-release knots under a buzzing lamp, trucks idling outside. The rigger's hands nicked, purple ink on thumbs, faith built from their monotony. Here is a smaller fact, one pack that lies. Outside, overcast flashes like lightning under a sheet. Fog on the ground smears the landing into a quiet that will turn violent. Cordite and cold oil in the air. The floor's grain comes through worn soles. Some men look away from Sloane, others stare too hard. Morale dips. Thoughts ripple fast at 800 feet in flak. Hart knows the only way to kill that ripple is to act. No time to inspect the stick, to rethread, to open half a dozen reserves. There is the door, the red and the green that will absolve or condemn. 2 minutes. Now won by engine note, by pulse, by wind that wants the canal and soft soil that drowns the slow. Hart is made by procedure, sharpened by the knowledge that procedures are tools. The schedule is the net everyone trusts. Tonight, the smart and the right have stepped to different sides. He pivots to the door, checks the line, lets the wind claw his cheeks. Flak marks the thinner lane ahead. Keep Sloane aboard, and the trim quivers. Put him out with a hollow reserve, and you gamble a kid's life against a plan. A second pass is off the table. The DZ timing is the promise they make to panels in a field they've never seen. The red feels redder than it ever has. Up front, the navigator counts with a finger he's worn smooth doing this. The crew chief's hand hovers at the red to green. This isn't a switch, it's a gate. He knows that snatching a man and strapping him in shifts the nose and forces a correction that shrinks their margin over treetops. On the ground, those code panels will look like salvation in half-light. The machine hides complexity under simplicity. Red, green, go. Hart looks down the line, packs that look like Sloane's, stamps tidy as alibis. 2-person checks and third signatures have been scripture. Carbon copies hide corrections unless you tear them apart. He weighs one man's humiliation against one man's death and hates the war for making math out of bodies. Flak scratches the skin of the ship. The stick sways as one thing under a gust. The first time Eddie rode a plane this loud, red felt like breath in, green like breath out. Tonight, red is a stop over a cliff, green the push. He watches Hart's jaw. That is where the plan lives when orders thin. The reserve against his chest is a lie pressed on his heart. He knows to keep quiet about windows and intervals. He's never been taught what to do when a piece everyone assumes turns out to be a shell. A movement up front tightens the tunnel. Green is close. The first 3 roll shoulders, slap webbing, boots edge the door. Hart's hand grabs the frame, fog spray kisses his cheeks. Discipline is clock. Courage is stepping into wind with silk and cord. Leadership is deciding who pays when the math insists. He tilts the tag again as if 10 seconds could change ink. Paper slides under his thumb. He pulls a fountain pen, scratches the lot number into the inside of his glove with ink that may never dry. The forklift in his mind honks in a barn that smells of hay and oil, a corner label smudged by rain, hands tying knots under a buzzing lamp. Somewhere in that chain, the wrong swap. He can't fix it here. He can remember. A burst rocks them, teeth clack, a rosary whips beads against a glove. The engines become a wall he leans into. The crew chief looks for heart signal, nod or hand. Everyone needs him as a metronome, not a man. He cannot be both until he commits. Sloane's fingers work his mane, patting for twists, snags, misrouted strap. Nothing obvious, only the truth that you can't check everything in a red cave with wind grabbing your hands. He yanks leg straps tighter. Tight feels like control. His eyes flick to padding in his reserve as if staring will conjure silk. Heights never scared him like the first step does. He wants Hart's decision because choices hurt less when someone else makes them. The green is a temperature change waiting to happen. With it comes clarity edged with anger at a process that betrayed him and a cold resolve. Hart leans into the door to taste the drop, gauges crosswind that would drag men into water. He pulls back and pins Sloane with a look he uses when men either follow or don't. We swap now. His hand moves, but whose reserve comes off. The red burns like a wound. Helmets turn. Eyes latch on Leo, on the door. On seconds, the navigator counts toward green. Hands dive for buckles with mittened clumsiness. Eddie heaves against webbing as Leo slaps his reserve latches, taps metal to signal steady, palms the dead pack once to drive the point. Padding, straps, no canopy. Slipstream shreds edges off words. The floor vibrates. 18 men. If one stays and one reserve comes off, weight shifts aft. The pilot will feel it. The serial behind them stacks nose to tail, and the flak corridor is timed like a fuse. A swap means someone rides without a safety to keep the stick on time, or timing blows, and the second pass they won't get becomes a demand. The risk spills forward. Temple, 2 back, taps his reserve. Give it to the kid. He's jumped enough times to make a bargain with fate. Kimbrough beside him shakes his head hard, jaw tight, pointing at the arithmetic they all know. A reserve is last ditch for streamers at low altitudes, but minds make bargains in red light. Temple's hand finds the latch. Kimbrough's catches his wrist. The plane lifts a hair as bodies lean into argument. Hart has no seconds for debate. Devereaux's voice cuts from lead. 2 minutes to green. Maintain interval. Crosswind pushing right. No go-around. It snaps like a door. He trims human noise with schedule because a shuddering mess over flak is a body count. In the harness, a breath is the difference between request and order, and Hart doesn't get it. Leo takes Temple's eyes, then Eddie's, and swallows a stone. Temple strips his reserve, metal bites glove, strap sings through webbing, pack thumps the deck. Eddie's fingers fumble the dead unit. Leo rips it off, shoves Temple's real reserve into Eddie's chest, cinches until Eddie grunts. Kimbrough's mouth shapes fairness. Hart doesn't hear it. Fairness is not tonight's currency. He taps his own chest once. I'll carry the bad one. He straps on the empty pack. It weighs nothing. It weighs everything. Flak blossoms underneath. White-orange snaps punching low cloud. Rivets tremble. The rosary sags and whips as the Dakota takes a slap of air. A sour, masked cough spreads. The DZ letters are laid in a field, a greeting they'll trust at speed. Timing is everything, and all of it is right now. Leo keeps the empty box strapped to his chest. Geometry matters. Harness and straps are habit, and habit keeps hands from frantic at the door. He feels the metal against bone and the air where silk should be. The choice holds timing, balance, morale. It will be judged by people who never heard this noise. He steps into the door and tastes fog. The wind tests his weight. Radio from lead demands tight intervals against drift to keep bodies off the canal's slick lip. He decides to push 323, buying lateral space with cadence instead of hope. He chooses not to pluck one man out and loosen all spacing. He takes the other risk. Cut. A barn smells of damp hay and oil. A buzzing lamp trembles. CPL. Ruth Alvarez works sleeves rolled, chalk on hands, pencil behind ear. Rigger's ghost between trestles, canvases puddled, quick-release knots flicked and checked, rhythm fending off the thought of lungs at 900 feet. Outside, a forklift honks impatience. A truck idles like a toothache, hurrying hands even when no one says hurry. Her stamp board holds purple ink that bleeds when touched too soon. Protocol: 2-person check and a third QA signature. T5 is friend by nickname. Alvarez knows training reserves, canopyless demo packs, and combat reserves that billow into second chances. Training packs wear pencil. Training only, supposed to wear. She signs off a batch, eyes gritty, promises recheck after loading, a promise made under fluorescent hum. Forks slide under a pallet, stamped Dispatch 2300. In the rain-smudged corner, a faint pencil note. Training only. Cole points. The driver glares at the clock and shouts about gate times. Alvarez sees the note. She makes a call that will sour, swap with Lot 2B, push flag to Monday. The forklift obeys a hand signal that means now. Carbon forms shuffle. A stamp hits purple onto a top sheet. Rework. It should sit as a warning. A hand lifts it, tucks it under a cleaner sheet, because paper smooths friction. The smudge that should stop becomes an underline no one will read. Alvarez tells herself she'll call QA as soon as the truck pulls away. The horn blares. The pallet rolls into rain that bleeds ink. Back in the aircraft, the pilot rocks into heading. Hart feels the plane settle. Under wing, flak jerks hedges and ditches into relief. Eddie clamps his jaw to stop a chatter working loose. The canal is a black slash he refuses to watch. He steals one glance at the tag on his chest and tells himself dates are facts. 1 minute. The red deepens. Stand up. Hook up. Voices cascade down the stick, hands following, carabiners throat click to anchor cable. Each click turns manual into cliff. Hart feels the wind through the door and knows drift eats spacing if he leaves room. He leans and commits. The 3-2-3 cadence will keep them out of water. Green hits like a verdict. The ship lurches in flak. Arguments die. They go. Hart steps. Sloane's boots beat the threshold, and he is in black. The Dakota yanks away into cloud and tracer. Crosswind hits hard. Lines hiss. Pilot chute snaps. Canopy punches open with a bruising jolt. For a heartbeat, he believes in fabric and rope and the contract between gravity and packed silk. He clears a line over his right shoulder, kicks, steadies swing, and sees through fog a pale rectangle, the DZ letter, panels like a message on a tablecloth. Wind has him long toward the canal, toward soft ground ready to catch and drown the slow. Fourth man out snags a heel, twists in the door. His canopy blooms crooked, lines corkscrewed. He fights, shoulders torque, fists on risers, boots scythe fog. Spin is a gear in him now, reserve handle flashes, yanked, nothing changes. The bundle sits under his chest like a drum with no skin. He yanks again, no square. The ground swells, diagonal and fast. He arrives like a sideways throw, not a landing, a crack like a bottle. Lines go slack, canopy drapes a hedge, the tag on his chest slaps, date bright under water beads. Hart senses the spin as his own canopy blooms. Duty grid lines cross his face, rally, objective, timing, while a man's boots level with his head. He can't fix silk in the air, he can mark where the body will hit, cut drift to be near. The crosswind eats his intention. He hauls a rear riser to mush the T5, releases before stall, trades altitude for lateral, gambling seconds to get close, like trying to beat a falling plate to the floor. Sloan rakes a hedge, twigs tear leggings. He bends into a parachute landing fall, takes thigh, hip, shoulder. Mud hits with the give of a wet mattress and the slap of a board. The canopy drags. Wind becomes a mule. He crawls, saws at lines with his rigging knife. Silk collapses, bell deflating over hedge like a surrender flag. Shouts skid around in the fog. Instinct unclamps his reserve. He flips the pack and sees what his fingers knew. Quilt squares, webbing, absence. The tag sits crisp, purple neat, date and lot stamped for comfort. Water beads and refuses to blur it. In the corner, a number overwritten tight. He grips it because he needs one thing that can be held and hated. Heart hits rutted road, left knee pops white, rolls and powers up, fists the canopy to his chest to keep out of the canal. DZ panels lie right. The stick's path is boot prints in wet, the wrong shape by the hedge. He lopes, forgets to keep low, hears a short burst of fire somewhere beyond the fog. He slides to the twisted trooper, leg wrong, helmet strap chewed into cheek. Hart sits his breathing down, fixes what he can while the things he can't crowd his eyes. He touches the reserve handle out of habit and feels the same neat purple tag. Same flourish. He pockets the cold knowledge. A medic appears from the fog, bag bumping, helmet scuffed. He works fast, one eye on sky. He slits the reserve, finds padding, tidy folds, absence. He peels the tag and sees the same tight overwriting. He splints a shin that will scream later. Same hand, he mutters to the ledger he's opening. In the barn, Alvarez pins a torn tag to a field map with a thumbtack that squeaks. The lot number with its tight correction draws a line back to a truck idling, to a smudged pencil, training only, to the substitution she made, under hum and ticking and hurry. She fans carbon tags. Midway, she finds a faint rework shadow under a clean top sheet. The purple stamp she buried by neatness comes back up in her throat. On the field, the panel crew kneel in their shallow trench. Hart keeps looking up between compressions and counts because the sky is his only clock. No radio story will carry this. Brevity won't fit empty sacks or guilt. The lead will put green on because drift tables say so. Sticks will keep stepping into math. Hart stopped trusting 45 seconds ago. Sloan, moving with pain unpacking, threads toward Hart's voice, rifle up out of training. He stumbles over lines from a canopy hung in a tree. He sees the medic and the splint, and the face he knew as a joke, now wrong, and then, terribly, his own. He holds up his tag like a pass. The medic snatches it, matches lot to lot, reads the same overwriting. Lot and serial and Southland in a single sentence. Choices made in a barn have grown teeth. Alvarez jabs the map near sun, rally point offset by wind, panels benign near emptiness. Medics paired to wrong places lose time. She leans toward the corporal with the field radio. Change the letter code, by seconds, spread the window. Changing panels mid-run isn't in the book. Engines through the barn wall stiffen arm hair. The corporal glances at her like he's asking permission to break a small law to save larger ones. Hart waves two men to lift, that 100-year-old soldier carry, armpits, knees, elbows, and they stumble toward a tree that looks like every tree. He trots, shepherding. New canopies skim the fog. Every opening is relief he resents. He thinks of Temple tearing off his reserve and of his own empty box. Which problem did he solve, and which did he rent? Arithmetic is why he's carrying a leg and not counting squares on a map. Flak punctuates clouds. C-47s tilt in crosswind. Somewhere in the next ship, a junior jump master watches a reserve that looks too neat and thinks why too late. In the barn, a phone rings. Alvarez won't pick it up. She can't say hello to a voice that will ask for numbers she can't promise. The medic taps the wounded man's cheek. A noise like a box dragged over a floor says the man is still here. He pockets the tag as relic. He tells Hart to bring more, not cruelty, triage. Hart nods because engines are nearer and someone is shouting a name that isn't answered. He points Sloan toward a shape moving in fog that could be friend, enemy, or the next problem. They go. Alvarez presses the rework stamp. It's cool and irrevocable. She writes the lot number in margins larger than towns, circles it, writes training only beside, underlines until chalk snaps. She can hear the south like a chair dragged overhead. She tells the corporal again, change the letter, bend the seconds, multiply breath. On the field, Hart slashes a signal, flip the letter. The signalman sprints, yanks a panel, breaks the pattern the navigator is hunting. Risk misidentification to buy time. White shapes spell a warning where an invitation should be. A C-47 wobbles, banks, acknowledgement or correction for wind. Either way, flak crews twitch timing. A gap opens like an accident, and 3 sticks slip while the guns adjust. Devereaux's navigator squints as the letter turns wrong under them. He swears soft, checks the watch against corridor timing. The pilot looks for a decision. Devereaux taps the contingency line penciled thin on acetate. He signals, widen. He risks a corridor commander's wrath and a snarl behind to bleed speed and time. He keys the intercom. Hold 1 minute. Drift north of the canal. Green on my mark. Interval tight. No hesitation. The crew chief calls 2 minutes. Red aches. Breath goes shallow. At the barn, Alvarez's runner hits mud to the knees and gasps. Panel team moved, radio hissing about a number. She steadies him, shoves a crate streaked red into his hands. Give it to the airfield duty officer. Say we halt issue until reinspection. He warns the halt will jam trucks and thin tarmac space. She says that's the point. She writes the lot number on the chalkboard again and boxes it like a stop line. On the battle side of Hedges, a medic unrolls another reserve and finds an internal safety stitch intact, never cut. Even with silk, it wouldn't have left the bag. He whistled flat, shows a staff sergeant who has materialized with a clipboard, after-action ghost already harvesting evidence. The sergeant writes the lot number on his palm, nods at the pattern. Same lot, same neat stamp, same correction, same failure. He looks at Hart. Hart says, make it reach planes inbound any way you can. The sergeant eyes the radio jeep like a vine that might carry shock faster than wind. In the next aircraft, a private named Creel grips his reserve with new awareness. Across from him, Temple sits bare-chested in his harness, jaw set. Creel thinks of odds argued at altitude that turn into faces at 700 feet. The crew chief's palm runs harnesses like blessing. He pauses at Temple, eyes flick to chest, slaps his helmet once, rules bend together. Green floods, motion over regret. Alvarez sorts a corner stack of training reserves, canopyless, pencil-marked in shy hands. Rain makes pencil disappear. Forklifts make shadows lie. One pack bears a carbon tag like combat's, date overwritten, initial too clean. Her finger traces an uncut safety seam, a stitch that would keep even real silk inside. She lays it beside combat canvas. Systems borrow under pressure. Borrowed parts bring their rules along. On the net that never allows stories, the DZ flickers a code the navigator translates with a finger. Warning, reserve suspect, lot flagged. He spins the selector, hungry for a rule break that says more. Wind and timing calls answer. He looks at men priced into fuel, and minutes, raises a hand. Go. Green ripples. Faith in procedure is the only bridge in some air. He wonders if they are prudent or afraid and shoves the thought behind the next mark. Hart crouches by the broken trooper, hears the slam of a crate landing wrong. He imagines a stamped lot riding that crate and the hands that passed it, young ones who will remember this night like a scar. Older ones who knew a cut corner would cost and hoped the bill would go elsewhere. He looks at men forming along hedges and calls direction. He stops, tells the medic, "Count tags like ammo." He means it. At assembly, the medic's clipboard fills. 3 reserves from the same batch, 2 mains with twists turned fatal by dead backups. He writes the lot number again, underlines it, draws an arrow to where code letters shifted at Hart's shout. He wants a moral, settles for cause and effect. He pockets the ugliest tag and decides Alvarez's carbon won't be the only survivor. The rigging radio crackles. Forward controller too calm. Delay acknowledged, window flexed, reserve suspect, lot flagged. Alvarez and the corporal hear what won't be recorded, a favor across rules because someone on the ground broke a pattern in time. She palms a stack of good reserves that haven't moved and thinks of the men who won't have to trust them. She presses her hand to a tag and leaves her print in damp. Later, testimony spools. Alvarez under buzzing lamp and a clock that lied by 10 minutes. The forklift driver swears rain eats pencil. A crew chief calls the green holy. The medic lays tags like bones, points to the same lot with the same thin correction. Hart says he told a man he wasn't a variable and went back to his watch. Rework shows faint on the second sheet, clean on the first. Someone at the table asks how many minutes the operation lost. No one asks how many names they almost did. By late morning, the DZ murmurs with bandages and coffee. Hart stands by the canal that stole his drift and gave him time to notice. Sloan limps up, reserve swapped, face pale with a story he'll start and stop for years. Hart tells him to sit and save breath. When Sloan asks if the bridge is taken, Hart says bridges don't care who crosses. Men do. He watches an emptying sky and thinks of tags as a quiet alphabet of risk. Under slanting light in the rigging shed, a neat stack of reserves sits on a table cleared of dust and excuses. Paper tags hang in a fan. The purple stamps on some are knife-sharp, on others already spreading where damp from the open door has crept in and turned ink into soft halos. The corporal at the barn door calls for a runner. The runner looks to Alvarez. She nods. The crate is heavy. The next serial is nearly overhead.